everybody. Welcome to episode 62 of the Alexei Sayle Now Weekly podcast, which means we are piling on listeners like nobody's business. It's a 9% rise. I'm going to say that's a 15% rise.
Every time before we start recording, Alexei asks, how many more people this week?
I'm a weird mixture of not caring at all about popularity and like caring about it a lot.
It was because a few weeks ago I mentioned that we had a 14% rise.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of like doing stocks, isn't it? It's kind of fun. It's like gambling in the stocks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also think I think of the algorithm as being like a monster that lives in a lair, and if you can just attract its attention, it will, or a giant or something. If you can attract its attention, it will smile on you and reward you with, listening.
Yeah, you just need to find the right thing to do, the right behavior, exactly. The right sound to make, the right movement.
Yeah.
To catch its eye. Let's do next week's show in bikinis.
I don't know. I think the algorithm is I don't know. Well, I think it's censorious, really, or the algorithm that looks over our part of the internet. It won't be fooled by stuff like that. It rewards, it rewards sincerity and moral rectitude, I think.
Yeah,
I'd like to think
persistence.
Yeah, unlike anything else. So, I mean, we usually do. Do we do politics? I know there's an amnesty today has come out stating that Israel is committing genocide.
I don't know about this. Tell me.
Yeah, there's a big report today, which is significant. I mean, it's amnesty. It's not getting an enormous amount of coverage in the legacy media, but I noticed Sky this morning was taking a press conference from a woman whose daughter is a British woman whose daughter is the only British hostage in Gaza. They're giving that a lot more attention then.
Yeah, and Starmer's going to talk to Qatar about that because he's going to Qatar. What's Emily Damari is the hostage, the British-Israeli hostage.
That's the one, yeah. So he's concerned.
She's been all around. She's been doing the press rounds, her mum.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you how you feel about that. Because it is obviously it's sad that anyone's kid is...
Yeah, I mean, the woman is obviously suffering and, I think I caught a bit of her saying, giving the Israeli government talking points that, there should calls for an immediate ceasefire are wrong because that will just encourage Hamas. Quite how, I don't know, but I think she's only been given airtime partly because she's parroting a kind of strongly pro-Israeli line. I suspect if she said anything else, as some of the hostage, not British, but as some of the hostage parents have, stated very strongly anti-Netanyahu, anti-Israeli apartheid opinions, they don't get the coverage that this woman is getting. I'm sure she's suffering horribly, but then so are hundreds of thousands of Palestinian parents, particularly in Gaza. And, it's cynical, I think, in a way that she is getting so much attention. I would say I haven't seen whether there's been any, counter, whether there is anybody else on saying, stating a more rational point of view, but I doubt it really.
Just to say a ceasefire would only encourage Hamas is such a callous thing to say.
It is, yeah. I guess I didn't see all of it, but her press conference, but clearly the deaths. It doesn't appear from her saying that the deaths of Palestinian children, Palestinian women, innocent Palestinian civilians, doesn't seem important to her, or indeed to British media or the British government. So
tell us about this Amnesty International thing, because my understanding was last year they did a similar thing, didn't they?
Amnesty, I don't know. They said they did a report a year, I think in 22, saying that Israel
is an apartheid.
Is an apartheid regime, but this is now very, based on meticulous research, saying that that this is incontestably a genocide that's happening in Gaza, and it just gives you, I guess, it gives you more ammunition to say that I think it was real. Amnesty and Human Rights Watch and B'Tselem saying that Israel was an apartheid state really was a useful weapon to have in your toolbox, as it were, that you could say to people, well, these organizations of impeccable kind of morality have stated that Israel is operating a genocide. And so you can also say that is operating a system of apartheid. And so you can also say that about... you can also now use that argument. Say Amnesty has said incontrovertibly that this is a genocide going on in Gaza, and
it's like nothing new to us, is it? But it's a tool. It's something that we can use. It's useful.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I had a couple of messages from listeners I wanted to bring up with you.
Yes.
Carrying on from our aircraft chat last week, someone pointed out to me that the Hindenburg, the OG air carrier airship, was lined with cow guts.
Was it?
Yeah, because that's the only thing. Because the molecules of the helium is so small that it can escape through the tiniest gaps.
I think the problem with the Hindenburg was it was also filled with hydrogen, wasn't it? Because
hydrogen, that's it.
The Germans couldn't afford, which is a highly flammable gas as opposed to helium, which the Airlander is filled with.
I meant hydrogen,
an air gas,
and it's also very tiny molecules that can escape through normal materials. And cow guts, they found, were one of the only things that didn't let the gas pass through.
Right.
Also, Alexei, in our Patreon community chat room, which is popping off.
Yeah.
It's really nice. I've made a chat room in there where everyone can kind of talk to each other and also mention things to me.
Yeah.
I'd love to get you as like an undercover boss. You can sign in with an anonymous email and you can go in there and have a look at what people are saying. People have mentioned a couple of interesting topics that I just wanted to float past you. Mm-hmm. That's where I heard about the Hindenburg cow guts thing from Anthony. Let us know that. Michael also asks about that Stalin Ate My Homework is available as an audio book. And I've had a few messages asking whether Thatcher Stole My Trousers will ever have the same treatment. And I think about a year or two ago, we discussed this and then it kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
But it's something we could do.
I have good news it's not good news for you, but it's good news for the public. The Bloomsbury were going through the publishers of Thatcher Stole My Trousers were going through the back catalogue and realised that there wasn't an audio or a book of Thatcher Stole My Trousers and have decided to action that. So I am going into the studio in January for 3 days to do the audiobook version.
Oh, holy shit. No, that's great news, man.
Yeah. Well,
there's a hunger for it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a big market now, a much bigger market, audiobooks. And they realised they were kind of stupid not to
have done it a long time ago.
Done it at the time, yeah. So so that'll be good, and hopefully they're a pretty big company, Bloomsbury. Hopefully they will get behind it, with pushing it publicity and
wicked, man,
on the platform. So your wishes have been answered.
Look at the timing of that question.
Yeah, I don't know what the turnaround will be. Obviously, I'd say they think. I can probably do it quicker, but they think 3 days to record it, and then I don't know how long it takes to turn around an audiobook, whether they want to do it like cover design, as it were, and shit like that, and do publicity before it goes out, or whether they just kind of drop it. I don't know about. I mean, I'll talk to them about those.
But we're probably looking at the first quarter of next year. It will probably come out.
Absolutely.
Man, that's great. Good luck with that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's really good news. I'm not bitter at all because we were going to do that together and maybe sell it ourselves. But no. That's fucking great. And you've got a big heavyweight like Bloomsbury behind you. That's fantastic. Great. Well, also last week you mentioned, because I brought up the film The Killer by David Fincher, starring Fassbender, and you mentioned that you were kind of sick of the Hitman for Hire genre of films. Well, Liam on the Patreon community chat mentioned a movie that is in that genre, which is one of my all-time, I think is in my top 10 all-time films. Can you guess what it is? Is there, well, let's ask you, is there a Hitman for Hire film that you do like, that you think maybe?
I think there probably are. I mean, I haven't really thought about it as a genre. I mean, because the Bourne films are obviously not really that.
Not really.
There's a parallel. But,
okay, what about one starring a very pro-Palestine Hollywood star who has been in some great films and then more recently some shit films? Does that ring any bells?
No.
No. Gross Point Blank is the film.
Oh, right.
Starring John Cusack.
John Cusack. I always forget his name, John Cusack.
Have you seen that film?
I have, years ago. Well, that might be, yeah. It's early on in the genre. He goes back to his old high school, doesn't he?
That's right, yeah.
And then has to carry out a hit for some reason.
In his old hometown, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we could have a look at that, yeah.
It's really, really good. Yeah, it's just clever and funny and not too much. And then there's only like a couple of action scenes and they're just done really well.
Right.
He has to do a hit in his old hometown and it coincides with the high school reunion, which he decides to go to. It's fucking great.
Right. Well, we could are we saying that we will watch that and then comment on it, or we're holding an
that's
advisory?
Up to you, my friend. It's the Alexei Sayle Film Club. I was just bringing it up as a good Hitman for Hire film, which is objectively
I will
good.
acknowledge that. I actually, shame on me, I rather like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I have to say. I mean, the film, not the TV series. Just because it goes so full-bloodedly for the whole kind of...
That's got a proper cult following. There's always like memes of that film on Instagram as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why it's because obviously it's kind of sexy and they're both so attractive, but it's also got I always like a story within a story, because you got them visiting the therapist and you got the other couples with the therapist, kind of framing device, I think it's called. I like a nice framing device. And we can talk about framing devices if anybody's got a kind of archetypal framing device would be like Sunset Boulevard, for example, where, the story is narrated by a dead man floating in a pool. I'm a big fan of the framing device. With Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it's them going to kind of couples therapy. It is a cynical, there are people slaughtered in their hundreds, but I think it was a charming film in many ways.
Yeah, I think it was kind of lumped in with just like a Hollywood schlock kind of cash grab, because they were a couple at the time as well.
No, I think that's when they became a couple. He was married to poor Jennifer Aniston at the time, and then she got off with him.
Oh no!
Because I've got 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Well, if you've got 6 degrees of Angelina Jolie, I've got a 6 degrees of. I've got a score of 2, because I did a film with Jason Patric, and Jason Patric was married to Angelina Jolie.
Which one's Jason Patric?
He's not that well known, really.
I love when you do that, because let me just look up Jason Patric. Very unrecognizable face. Oh, The Lost Boys, that's his big one.
Yeah.
I love when you do the 6 degrees thing, because I always think I only have to add 1 to that, and then I can claim it. So I've got 3 degrees away from Angelina Jolie.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of trying to do a stand-up comedy bit about it, but I don't think it is that half of the central cast of Train Spotter are in Black Hawk Down, which I think is sort of bizarre, as if like the characters, they somehow got into the US Army, because Ewan Bremner and Ewan McGregor are both in Black Hawk Down.
Oh, wow.
So I just think it's kind of weird, really, which is I sort of didn't interesting. I've been through a journey with that film, because I kind of quite enjoyed it when I first saw it, but then you think that it's Somalia, isn't it?
Somalia or Ethiopia
or Sudan? That's terrible that we don't know. I think it's Somalia. But then you think that the people that the US Army is slaughtering are the indigenous population, you know?
Yeah.
And it suddenly becomes just the most repellent piece of filmmaking, really.
It's
Once
Somalia.
that strikes you.
Somalia.
Yes. General Aidid is who they're trying to kidnap.
Eric Bana is in that. I enjoy his work.
Yeah.
And Orlando Bloom, who I've got 2 degrees of separation
Have
from.
you?
My dad was mates with his dad.
Really?
Yeah, his dad was was a journalist. I haven't seen him in a while. I don't know if he's still around. We went to his country house in France once and had lunch with him. So that means you have 3 degrees from Orlando Bloom.
Yeah. In fact, somebody mentioned, somebody on YouTube, I think, mentioned a film I did called Rhinoceros Hunting in Budapest. They said that was 2 hours of their life they'd never get back. But Ewan Bremner was in that from the cast of Trainspotting.
Ah.
And they're right. It was the most peculiar film, really. I mean, I had a very nice week in Budapest in the 90s, but fuck knows what it was about.
Have you ever seen Dog Soldiers?
Is that a Western?
No, it's a Scottish werewolf film.
Oh, that one, yes, it's very good. It's a sort of low budget.
Yeah.
It's Pertwee's son, isn't it? You actually haven't seen her out.
Yeah, Sean Pertwee.
Sean Pertwee, a very good actor, I thought. No, it's a good film, that. It's obviously shot on quite a low budget, but
they've
very
done
well
it really
done.
well.
Yeah.
Right, and then lastly, I wanted to bring up an interesting comment brought up on the Patreon community chat room, which you, dear listener, can join in on the fun by signing up to our Patreon. You can do that by visiting patreon.com/Alexei Sayle Podcast. That's patreon.com/Alexei Sayle Podcast. Sign up for a minimal fee, buy us a cup of coffee a month. You'll be supporting your favorite podcast and joining in on the chat room fun and enjoying some exclusive content as well. Paul had this to say. Alexei, Talal, everyone, where do you stand on separating the art from the artist? Hearing Day of the Jackal discussed on the podcast, written by the pretty right-wing Frederick Forsyth. I don't know why I'm still doing the voice. Written by the pretty right-wing Frederick Forsyth. And also having heard the podcast on Evelyn Waugh. I have no problem with either of them. I guess he means their art. Yet hearing Desert Island Discs this week, I felt a great disappointment when a famously left-wing comedian, I won't say his name on the air.
He gave me a big up, didn't he? So I like him for that. But yeah, go on.
Oh,
anyway.
you heard the episode as well?
No, but somebody told me. I will listen to it.
What do you think? We need to get him on the show then. We can drill him on this because he chose a record by Nick Cave on his Desert Island Discs.
Right.
And Cave has spoken, amongst other things, about his abiding love for Israel and criticized the cultural boycott of Israel.
Yeah.
So should he stop listening to his comedy? Should he stop listening to Nick Cave? Should he stop reading books by right-wing people? This is a topic that is close to my heart because, you, Alexei, you're an utter bastard and I still like your art. No, I'm joking. People like Michael Jackson is the big example.
Yeah.
Because, it's blaringly obvious that he did some horrible shit to little kids.
Yeah.
A lot of people tried to convince themselves that it's not true and it's just alleged.
Yeah.
But when there are enough red flags, you can't really keep ignoring them. However, I grew up with that music, and it was a big part of my life as a small child and growing up into my teens. And those memories, for me, are beyond who the man was. It's kind of it's a part of my childhood. So am I supposed to just erase those memories? Am I supposed to resent those memories? The fun I had with my family, you know, dancing in the living room, listening to those tunes, and he doesn't own those memories, is what I'm getting at. Those are my memories, and I shouldn't have to like resent. I don't like actively seek out his music now and listen to it. But you know, I don't. Well, I love the music. I hate what he is, and it is a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, I guess this is something that a discussion that we could spend longer on, really, and it could even maybe have an expert if such exists on this. I think that it's also a subject to which there are no solid kind of borders, really. I think it's up to every individual, by and large, to make up their own decision. Something like Nick Cave, I mean, tremendous prick. Actually, somebody was vaguely associated with that rhinoceros hunting in Budapest. I can't remember if he did the music for it, but I remember meeting him at a lunch with the producers and I remember saying to him, I don't know much about your music, but I really like that song you did with Kylie. Which he replied, I would have said, fuck off to, you know, if somebody said that to me, like, you know what I mean? But it was a kind of crass kind of thing to say in a way, but he was polite about it. Yes, he has been. I mein, he's also a man who's been visited by enormous personal tragedy himself.
Yes.
But yeah, it certainly does poison your view of the man. Whether it poisons, I mean, Larry David, you know, in a way, I mean, uses comedy. I think, you know, I mean, comedy at its best can address profound matters. Was I talking about the Mitchell and Webb sketch? I was talking to somebody.
Yeah,
but similarly, you know, the Larry David, where he's whistling Wagner, and then somebody, because obviously Wagner was wildly anti-Semitic, that somebody then upbraids him for, you know, for enjoying the music of Wagner, and it's a sort of, you know, through the use of the comedic medium, he really questions. I think it's in that line where somebody calls him a self-hating Jew, and he says, you know, I've got a lot of reasons to hate myself, but being a Jew isn't one of them, which is a line I always give him credit for it, but I think it's a sort of, you know, it's a good comeback to that piece of idiocy.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting topic, really, and you can't. I mean, I feel very. I mean, for me, it's like your Michael Jackson is probably the films of Woody Allen, really, that I thought of, perhaps thought of, you know, several of the films of Woody Allen have been some of the greatest films that have ever been made. You know, Crimes and Misdemeanors. Like, he hit a kind of golden patch when he was with. I've forgotten her name. You know, woman who was married to Frank Sinatra. But, you know, Purple Rose of Cairo, Crimes and Misdemeanors, Hannah and Her Sisters, and several others are just. I mean, again, they contain within them. I mean, Crimes and Misdemeanors. I think it is a debate about profoundly deep philosophical notions of transgression and memory and living with yourself. I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen it since, you know, the stuff about Woody Allen kind of came out, really, and I don't know what I think about any of that, really. And I know it's worth more investigation, really. I think probably ultimately it's an area where, I mean, obviously not that anybody here is going to be a fan of Jimmy Savile, but you know, it's perhaps a theme worthy of further debate. I mean, I'm not going to be able to watch Bake Off anymore. I mean, what's that? I mean, the Christmas Bake Off has been taken off.
No, MasterChef.
Sorry. See, I don't even fucking know which show.
Have you ever met that guy?
everybody. I mean, that's one of the ones. I mean, everybody knew how unpleasant. I mean, I've been hearing for years how unpleasant he was. So people knew.
So how are these? Sorry to bring up the BBC, who you're about to tape for, but like, how do these things go on and not get fucking dealt with earlier?
Yeah, I mean, he had been reprimanded, I think. I don't know. I mean, it's also what is the public's affection for these obvious fucking terrible bastards? You know, somebody like him, you could see in every pore of his being that he was a dreadful person.
Yeah, he's not got star quality, has he?
I never got it really.
Yeah.
But because something like Inside the Factory is actually an interesting show. It's just got that fucker front in it, and so it sort of ruins it, really. Why the BBC doesn't act sooner? No, it's difficult, really. I mean, again, well, no, I don't know if it is difficult. I don't know is the answer to that, really.
You know, it's many years ago, I worked on Strictly Come Dancing. I was logging the videotapes and also as a runner during the live show. And we would tape stuff for It Takes Two, which is the side piece to Strictly, where they interview people and stuff. And
that's where Russell Brand made his name, wasn't it? As on the Big Brothers after party or whatever it was. Anyway, yeah, go on.
And we would like run around during rehearsals and stuff and interview the dancers and the stars, the guest stars for It Takes Two. And we were interviewing one of the dancers, and something really foul happened. This is a story I've been sitting on, but like I'm not gonna like reveal it all now. But someone interrupted the interview. We were interviewing one of the female house dancers,
right? And
one of the male house dancers interrupted the interview and did something really horrible.
Right.
And he was a big star. He was like the most famous dancer on Strictly.
Right.
And he did something horrible to her. And she just like giggled and laughed it off and said, fuck off, you scoundrel, like that.
Yeah.
And laughed it off and he like smiled and winked at the camera and walked away. And you could say it was like dancer locker room behavior. You know, these guys, you know, they see each other in the nick all the time, and this is the kind of behavior they do. But to do it while like a team is interviewing someone, and as a runner, as like early 20s-year-old runner, I'm sitting there. I went red, and I was like, "Is this normal?" I'm like, ha, 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 ha. And we just got on with it. But you know, and also he's such a big star, household name. It's kind of, you're looking up to them in a way, and you're like, I guess this is fine. You know, you kind of like, you're at such a low position, or at least you feel that way. As a runner, you're told, you know, you do what you're told and you stay in your place, and you just, so you just feel like, oh, I guess this is normal and this is fine. I'm not going to say anything. And we carry on with it. And the poor lady as well was just laughing it off. And it's hard to interpret that in the moment as her being defensive and trying to not make a fuss, whereas she should have, and she had every right to fucking kick off and storm out.
But back then she would have ended up getting punished probably.
She would have probably got punished for telling on him or something. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So I see how this stuff can slip through and not be made a big fuss over. But if it's continuous and happens over and over again, then it just becomes the norm. Or people are intentionally just ignoring it. I don't know what, or is it an institutional thing? Yeah,
I mean, there's something. I think there's something weird about presenters, and it's sort of about the same as true. I always thought about disc jockeys. Your fame is not really. It's not dependent on a skill you have. In a way, it's just like you're there.
It's momentum, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just a kind of weird. It's a weird to just be a. Hello, Wolf. It's weird to be a presenter is a weird. It's not, you're not there because of your skill. Like if you're a singer or comedian or something, because, you're there because of some kind of nebulous charm. And so it's a bizarre, it's a kind of weird thing to be in a way. And I wonder sometimes whether, it's also, again, this is all worthy of greater discussion, really. There is, what propels people to great fame is often great psychological disturbance, I think it's obviously clearly true in politicians, for instance, that people have, people with profound kind of personality disorders. And the same is true of in show business, really. And that disturbance can either be benign or can be malevolent, but that's what propels people to great power, great fame, great success, is often, tremendous psychological disturbance. And, so with somebody like Greg Wallace, it comes out in a pretty malign form. Sure.
And just being, once you've done it once or twice and gotten away with it, it can become habit. And then... Yeah,
and it's a way of...
And ignoring it becomes... Yeah. But it also... It seems like people have been complaining about him the whole time. There's a saying in Arabic, "La tankosh al-layt," which means don't finger the sewage.
Right.
Because you will, you dig up old stuff and you let the smell out. The whole room will stink.
It's not good advice, perhaps. Yeah,
it's not good advice. Sometimes you've got to dredge out this stuff.
Yeah,
and sometimes you got to. Oh, what's that horrible thing Donald Trump said?
Grabbing pussies, that one.
No, not grabbing pussies. Something about the swamp.
Drain
the swamp, mate. Yeah, you got to drain the swamp.
Something he has no intention of doing. But,
the BBC.
Well, this is something I'd be interested in what the listeners think about this. This is something to which we could return, really, as a theme. I have no... I think in terms of enjoying artists that are bad people, I think you have to make your own decisions about that. There's no hard and fast rules. I say that's the one for me that I have.
Woody Allen
is Woody Allen, really. Whether I like it or not. Nick Cave, I still like some of his music.
He's a bit overrated, if you ask me.
He is, and he's a person who's so up himself. He's come out the other side as well. Really. I suppose maybe that's how he's interested. That's how he's been able to survive losing 2 children. Is his own kind of tremendous.
Terrible.
Is that a nasty thing to say? We'll cut that, but he's somebody.
Said enough nasty shit. Fuck him. But horrible shit he's been through, man. Fuck. To lose kids is just unimaginable. And same, and like the lady whose kid is a hostage in Gaza. Like, that's got to fucking suck. That's got to be the worst thing imaginable. Yeah. Well, but you don't react to that by creating an even worse thing, Okay. Is it movie club time?
I think it should be, really, yeah.
Alexei Sayle Film Club.
Theme music.
This month we looked at Withnail. I'm going to do a little intro here. This month we looked at Withnail and I from 1987. My whole life I've called it Withnail and I because I never watched it. And now I know it's Withnail and I. Directed by Bruce Robinson, also written by Bruce Robinson. It's pretty autobiographical. Yeah. According to him. Produced by Handmade Films, which is a movie production company by George Harrison and Dennis O'Brien. Speaking of dated, weird art, there's some questionable stuff in this movie, but here's a little brief about it I wrote real quick. A pair of homophobic actor ponces in the middle of a drug and booze binge intend to deal with their lack of acting opportunities by extending their binge and talking each other's ears off. A retreat in the countryside only exacerbates their hopelessness, paranoia, and total inability to be responsible grown-up adults. Richard E. Grant shines as an utter bastard coward, and Paul McGann illuminates as a completely cowardly bastard in this terribly aged masterpiece study of what it meant to be a lovey-darling in the late 60s England. Withnail and I.
There's a lot of editorialising went on in there, if you don't mind me saying so.
Yes.
Not exactly a neutral review of
Fucking
bringing
stunning
your own
film.
views to the party. Yeah.
I have to admit, I watched it last night. I got home quite late from work and then whacked it on, and I couldn't help myself but join in the festivities of the film. So I'm quite hungover today, if you haven't heard it in my voice already.
You've been drinking, you've been matching them drink for drink.
Yeah, I did pretty much. Pretty much. Fucking hell. It's painful to watch unless you join in a bit.
Right.
Shockingly funny and good. And
well, I'll tell you, I mean, I'd say for me, what several things that were amazingly original about that film was, I think that it was made in 1987. Films then...
the year I was born.
Right. Oh, wow. Not mentioned in the film, but to reflect on the very near past, it's set in 1969, wasn't it? So less than 20 years before. To reflect on the very near past was then a very original thing to do. It was the first time I'd seen a film that really went back only less than 20 years, really, but to what was a very different era. So it's a film about about that, really, which made it feel intensely original. I think it was one of the first films that used just pop music, like Jimi Hendrix. And I mean, the opening sequence, I think, to that live performance of A White Shade of Pale is an amazing alliance of music and imagery. I think is extraordinary.
Yeah, really stunning opening sequence, almost like a painting.
And it is a film. I think it's, for me, it's also a film about. It is, in a sense, a film about memory. Really, that it's a film about and it felt kind of personal in that I think as you grow as an artist, or you have that period where it felt very real to me that you spend some time with absolute fuck ups who are on a level with you, and then you leave them behind, really, and you know that they are doomed, and you're going on to sort of success or a life in the straight world. And so it's profoundly clever in that it does that, I think. And Withnail at the end, or I, in fact, isn't it? Is the other one goes, never named, gets the lead role in the RC Sheriff play in Manchester, and he'll never see Withnail again, and Withnail will die of alcohol poisoning. But it also, within it, it obviously features Richard Griffiths as Uncle Monty, as a predatory gay character, but then there are the Ralph Brown as the drug dealer. Is he?
Danny.
He's not. Danny, that's right. Yeah. I mean, just again, if you were around in the 60s, you would meet people like that who it was just so clever, talk the hippie talk, but are also absolutely fucking terrifying.
Yes, if I medicined you, you'd think a brain tumour was a birthday present.
Yeah. And because it looks like a carrot, and I'm into the club.
He is an astonishing character and
fantastic piece of writing.
I wonder if that's how he actually talks.
Ralph Brown? No, I don't think so. I think because it's a wig and it. He's quite bored. I mean, he had a phase of then being in other movies.
When he came on the screen, I nearly had a heart attack because he's in Wayne's World 2.
Right.
Basically playing the same character.
Really,
it's a proper throwback to Danny. Yeah. He plays Del Preston in Wayne's World 2, who's like a legendary roadie who they enlist to help them out putting on Wayne Stock.
I think, it's that thing, isn't it? We talk about how when things are right, then all the things go. If the writing's right, then somehow the casting's right, and obviously whoever cast him as Danny, it was Mary Selway who did the casting. She was really interesting. She was a casting director. She was a communist. I remember she took me for lunch when I was on in Edinburgh before I broke through. So I think it was like 1980. Me and Tony Ann. She took me for lunch and was just desperate to kind of find me acting roles. And I don't think she ever did really, but she was again, I don't know if any of the listeners they're in the business have got memories of Mary Selway. She died a while ago, I think, but I remember she was a communist, but she cast a lot of, that film is brilliantly cast. I don't know. Particularly like Ralph Brown and even like Presuming Ed, and obviously Richard Griffiths as Uncle Monty, and I don't know, Paul McGann as I, and Richard E. Grant as Withnail. It's everybody is perfect in that movie. Even of course the guy with the one line, the policeman, get the man.
Yeah.
One thing's right, everything's right in a movie often.
And Richard Griffiths is really good in it. And I thought... So I watched an interview with Bruce Robinson and Richard E. Grant, and Bruce Robinson actually said he was very adamant that he's not a homophobe and wasn't at the time.
No.
He's telling a true story. Richard Griffiths' character, Monty, is based on someone called Zeffirelli.
Oh, yeah, Franco Zeffirelli.
Zeffirelli, who took... Bruce Robinson, who cast Bruce Robinson in a film and took him to Rome, where he was accosted, and this actually kind of really happened to him. And he was really adamant to not make Richard Griffiths because he doesn't come across as overly creepy until those little moments, and he's not completely camp. He's not a fruit, really overly fruity or anything. But he says that Dennis O'Brien from Handmade Films really insisted on making him really camp and camping him up. And Bruce Robinson put his foot down and said, I'm not making this movie if you turn him into a cartoon character. He has to be real. This is based on reality. And so it could have been done a lot worse. So these two characters, Withnail and I, are two desperate actors, out of work actors who want to get away from the city and have a retreat. So they visit Withnail's uncle, Monty. Withnail comes from a very rich family. Monty has a country house, and they ask Monty if they can borrow his country house. And they go over to his house. In the country,
we have to say it's the Lake District, so it's pretty bleak.
Penrith.
Yeah.
It's fucking miles away. They must have been driving for 6 hours to get there.
But again, that's great car casting, isn't it? That,
I wanted to ask you, what is that fucking car?
That's a Mark II Jaguar, yeah.
But it's got a headlamp missing, and one of the windscreen wipers is off. The driver windscreen wiper is broken, and they're constantly driving through the rain. So Richard E. Grant's in the passenger seat, kind of guiding him.
Yeah.
Because he can't see shit out of that window. Yeah. He's like, bear right, bear right, bear right. When they go over to... Go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, just that great scene where I falls asleep in the back when they're heading back to London and Withnail's driving off his head, and that amazing Jimi Hendrix track is playing. I think it's...
Voodoo Child.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary. For me, it's a kind of reminiscence of a similar kind of experiences,
They go to Monty's house. They dress up in fancy suits and have a shave, and they visit Monty, who is a really really fabulous character. Yeah. He's obsessed with vegetables. He's like, I happen to think the cauliflower more beautiful than the rose. He loves growing vegetables. Yeah. But And I is really fucking mean about him right from the beginning, which I didn't enjoy. I didn't like that. I felt really sad, really sorry for him.
Right. Well, I mean, it is him that Monty is aiming his attentions at, so maybe that's part of the...
Yeah, that doesn't come off straight away. And to be fair, when Monty accosts him, and I makes up this story that him and Withnail are a couple and he shouldn't come between them. Monty does back off. And he's very, he's like, oh, I didn't realize. I'm so sorry. And this is set during a time when being gay was not something you could do openly. Was it even a crime?
Just become legal a year before.
Just become legal. So Monty comes from a time when it was a complete crime to be gay.
Mm-hmm.
And it had to be done secretly and through code and winks and nods.
Mm.
And I imagine how many times, you'd make the move and would have misread someone and got yourself in terrible
that's
trouble.
A question, again, a kind of philosophical question, and we need to ask ourselves, which sort of relates a bit to the Nick Cave thing, is can you have these days somebody who has protected characteristics, as it were, but can they be the baddie, It's is that just, and there are obviously plenty of I think you have to be allowed that. You can't just because somebody's gay that they can't not be the baddie. It doesn't seem you can't. It does. I mean, that's not equality, really. I think, but I don't know what the listeners think about that.
Being gay doesn't
really
automatically make you a good person.
No.
Being black, being Arab.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to get typecast as a terrorist in acting jobs doesn't mean I'd never want to be a villain. I think I'd make a great villain. And, I want to play a villain. Yeah. I just don't want it to be about fucking jihad and death to America.
Yeah.
And that is a conversation that happens, I think, in the filmmaking world. And
what happens now, though? Do the people then email in with their views, or have they already commented? How does this work exactly?
What, in the Alexei Film Club?
Yeah.
What happens? We don't need to force anything. If people want to share,
what's going to happen now? What's the plan? What's going on?
We're discussing the film. That's the whole point. And the people at home
What's it mean?
People at home are nodding along or shaking their heads in anger.
Where's the?
I don't know what it means. This is our second time doing it. We're still fine.
It's not helping.
What are some of your favourite lines from the film?
Oh God, so man, what kind of man? I mean, that's also that. I mean, the marvelous scene at the end when he performs Hamlet, to the wolves in the zoo on the edge in Regent's Park is also amazing. But of course, it's also it's slightly because, of course, Richard E. Grant is such a good actor that he does it well. But I can't remember now. I've found myself. Can't remember it now. I personally will never play the Dane.
Yes.
But that also, when I realizes he'll never play the Dane, Richard Griffith's lines. There's so many good lines, really, I think.
So there is a...
Oh, that's you shouldn't mix your drinks when Richard drinks the lighter fuel.
Yeah, and then he offers him, what's it called? White
spirit?
White spirit. And he goes, no, you should never mix your drinks. And then he pukes up on his shoes. Yeah. So apparently during rehearsals, the lighter fluid tin was filled with water. And then for the take, Bruce Robinson filled it with vinegar.
Oh, right.
To get a proper reaction from him. And also Richard E. Grant is allergic to alcohol.
Yeah, doesn't drink, I know.
And so at the end of rehearsals, Robinson made him get drunk before the shoot because he wanted him to have a memory of what it feels like to be drunk, and he nearly fucking killed him. There is an interesting connection. There's a Kevin Bacon connection between you and this film, and it obviously came out during a big part of your career. Post Young Ones, pre Alexei Sayle stuff, I think, maybe. But you were like a massive stand-up star at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Had you done Porky Park?
No, I think I did Corky Park after The Secret Policeman's of the Ball. I think Corky Park was 83. I've worked with Richard Griffiths twice. Worked with Michael Elphicks.
Oh, really? Well, this was Richard E. Grant's second film. And the one he did before this was something called Honest, Decent and True with Aid Edmondson and Derek O'Connor. And it was the year before this. That came up in the interview, and I thought that was do you know this film, Honest, Decent and True?
Sounds familiar, but I can't remember anything about it. There's so many weird films made at that time. So.
Okay, fair enough. I thought that would be a fun talk
for Adrian. Yeah.
Paul McGann, who played And I
know him as well, yeah.
He's a Scouser, like you.
Yeah, well, they come from a big acting family. The McGanns, there was 5 of them that used to all appear in Blood Brothers. Was it a musical? Up on the Roof, it was called. And the whole family appeared in it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's quite old school. Well, he apparently kept getting fired and rehired during rehearsals because his Scouse accent kept coming through.
Really?
And he had to work very hard to nail that posh London accent. He's
very good. He also owned, we both for a while owned Rover P5B coupes. That gave us something to talk about. I don't know if he's still got his. Paul McGann, actually, I don't know whether, I can't remember if I've worked on something or other. I'm not sure. We shared an accountant for a while. And of course, he's very unlucky in a way because he was scheduled to play a Sharp you remember Sharp's Rifle?
That's Sean Bean.
Sean Bean, yeah. But originally it was Paul McGann. And then they were playing football, I think when they were first out in the Ukraine or somewhere where they filmed it. And he broke his leg playing football. So they had to replace him with Sean Bean, and it was Sean Bean's big breakthrough. And then I think there was something else where he was slated to play the lead and something happened. I can't remember what it was, or anybody else can remember. There was, again, he's never quite at the big break that he deserves, Paul McCartney, because he's at his best, a hypnotically good actor. There was something else he was going to play, some big series he was going to be the lead, and then something else happened to him. I remember what it was.
What's he doing now?
I guess he's still acting. I don't know, really. Lives in Bristol.
He is so good as our kind of conduit into this world.
Yeah.
The whole film is through his perspective.
Yeah.
He is the And I, isn't he?
Yeah.
He really holds that position well. And you really feel his fear. You feel his nervousness.
Yeah,
you feel his unwillingness to kill a live chicken.
Yeah, but it is brilliant at that. There's another great line: is that we've come on holiday by mistake. I mean, it so brilliantly captures those kind of. It seemed like when we were young, before I was in Showbiz, we would go away for weekends all the time, really, either to cheap hotels with friends or staying with people in their spare rooms and shit like that. And they often, not quite on the scale of obviously their holiday at Monty's Cottage, but they often turned into something, it often turned into kind of fairly nightmarish weekends, really. But you just kept on, never go anywhere now, it seemed like a kind of a passage of youth almost, that you would go away for kind of terrible weekends to places, and then weird shit would happen with people you didn't really know, and then you would get the coach or the train back to your real life kind of thing. But that seemed intensely kind of poignant and kind of evoked a lot of kind of sense of a generalized memory sense in me, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, when you and a bunch of friends are bottled up for a weekend like that,
it's something you do when you're young, isn't it?
Something bad always happens. There'll be an explosion at some point of emotion, behaviour.
Yeah,
and that's kind of reserved for like festivals now. I think
is that where that happens?
Weekends of wildness, and then you come back to the real world afterwards as if nothing.
Well, there's also the sort of interface with the locals, though, isn't it? You go somewhere in South Wales, and then you. My friend Joe is his partner's from South Wales, and they go up there sometimes, and he likes to go to the pub. When he goes to the pub, the locals just look at him and they go, "Who are you?" Just say to him, "Who are you?" And then he has to explain, my girlfriend's just, they live. And he's all right with, "Who are you?"
Who are you?
Who are you? And it's sort of like mad shit that happens with locals. You're actually letting, I think actually we did go away again with a friend of mine who's now dead. And I think we left the gate open and let some cows out and got shouted at by a farmer. As happens in Withnail, it's a very towny thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's foreshadowed nicely as well, because earlier on you see the gate and it has a big writing written on it. Close this gate.
Yeah.
That farmer is great. The casting is just spot on. The army, the ex-army general, pub landlord.
Yes. And you still use that phrase, I want the finest wines known to humanity as well.
He's such a ponce, that guy.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Where are we there yet?" And then And I says, "No, we're here." Which I love that line. And when they're deciding what to do with the chicken, they get given this live chicken by the farmer for dinner.
Yeah.
And they go, "Fuck us alive. How can we make it die?"
That's right.
He says, "Strangle it instantly in case it starts trying to make friends with us." And then I think Monty at one point says, we get shat on by the Tories and shoveled up by Labour. And that's just the cycle of life kind of thing.
Yeah, never a true word spoken.
I guess that is just the cycle of how it goes. So we're never like in the positive. We're always just being shat on and then unearthed and then getting shat on again. And one last thing I want to say about this film, and to get your opinion on, I saw some people claim that this is the beginning of the slacker movie genre.
Right. Explain to me what that is.
Slacker movie or stoner movies are like normally about friendship, group or a pair of friends.
And Kevin Smith's Clerks, for instance.
Kevin Smith, yes, indeed. Dude, Where's My Car? Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Right.
Films where it's like a case study of a way of life, and essentially, and more importantly, the dialogue is more important than the plot. The way, the language of the film is more important than the actual story.
Wayne's World, I suppose. Anyway.
Wayne's World, Dazed and Confused. This started that genre off in a way.
I doubt that it did, really. I think it's just because this film is so much more than that, really. I think it's just a coincidence, but I'm open to my view being corrected, really.
Well, I don't think it was intentional, but this film is so influential, isn't it? And it must have shown a lot of filmmakers that you don't have to be plot heavy. You can have a film which is about people and not about a story. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. I never really thought about the influence they had. It's funny because, there's also that thing about Bruce Robinson himself that he has never really made anything else that ever matched that. The next film he made was How to Get Ahead in Advertising, which again is with
Richard E. Grant,
where it grows another head, doesn't it? But of course, it was before CGI, so the head is just this kind of BBC effects department, kind of very badly done rubber head, which I don't think works at all. I know he's a screenwriter. He's worked as a scriptwriter and screen, but that was his masterpiece, really, which is better than nothing, I suppose, too.
Of course.
To make a masterpiece and then not make another. But I don't know how he feels about that, really.
Well, he must have been working on this film for a long time. I think he started writing it in the 60s.
Did he?
So you put your all into one film and then suddenly you're told to make another. Like, what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah. It's, yep.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you for sharing that film with me. I really, it has added something to my life. It is, and now I get it. I've seen when you watch a film like this for the first time and you all these references to it that you've seen in pop culture just start flashing before your eyes. And you're like, oh, I see. Yeah.
Well, imagine what it was like watching it when it came out. That was, just an amazing experience.
They go to that pub in Camden and it has IRA graffitied on the front of it.
Yeah.
So was that something that happened a lot in London? Was there stuff?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, it's not actually Camden Town. That is actually West London, and I think it's. I mean, if you watch, I maybe talked about this before. If you watch episodes of The Sweeney and stuff, filmed in London in the 70s, then there's large parts of London that are still boarded up, tinned up, empty bomb sites and stuff like that. Just, empty shops, collapsing neighbourhoods, some slated for regeneration, some just abandoned from the war. By 1987, there was a lot less of that, but there was a lot. I don't know whether that was filmed around, because you see the Westway in the background. That was filmed in, I think, near where I lived in North Kensington. I don't know whether there was a really interesting area in London of sort of south of the Westway that was scheduled, I think south of the Westway, that was scheduled to be redeveloped, and it was taken over by squatters, and they renamed it Frestonia. And it had their own like Frestonian national anthem, and I performed at the Frestonian National Theatre. I think maybe, I don't know how many books, I mean, there have been books of photographs about it. It was a really interesting area. So it was it declared its independence from the United Kingdom. And Tony Allen, of course, was very active in Frestonia. That's quite near where he lived in Notting Hill. And I wonder whether that sequence was filmed there, really. But yeah, there was.
Preston
Road. London was. I mean, it was interesting that you could see that these kind of still bomb sites you saw out in the corner of the shot, which was surprising. 1987. By then, regeneration was, I think, probably starting to pick up in London. So they were lucky to find an area like that looked like London in the 60s.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was IRA graffiti, and I mean, they used to play the Irish anthem in pubs on the Kilburn High Road, and then I remember my friend Cliff getting beaten up or shouted at because he wouldn't stand. He didn't know what the Irish national anthem was, but they played it and he didn't stand up, so he got shouted, and they would get shouted at.
Wow.
And then you would have regular collections. They would come round to closing time with collections for the Ra.
How did you feel about that at the time when you saw like Up the Ra? Would you hold a fist up?
Up the Ra. I was. Oh God, can we do this another time?
Yeah, yeah. Let's do it next time.
Yeah.
And chew on that topic about the art, separating the art from the artist as well.
Yeah, and we still haven't done design of the. We're still having a debate raging about the design of the AK-47, whether the trigger assembly.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that next time. No rush for that topic.
Garand M1.
But you have a busy weekend.
Well.
You have a busy weekend ahead of you, don't you?
I do. We're recording Sandwich Bar Friday and Saturday. Yeah.
Real quick, how do you feel?
Good. I think the shows are fantastic. I think it's been very hard work to write. For 2 hours. Essentially, what you're having to write is 2 hours of
stand-up,
top-notch stand-up from scratch, more or less, and that is tough. And Sandwich Bar, it's award-winning. It has such a reputation. I did a benefit last week and two musicians said, they'd been touring the Highlands and that's all they'd listened to was Sandwich Bar, and they had to pull over sometimes because they were laughing so much. And they were talking about, one of them was from Liverpool, they were talking about the bit about Scousey McStabface being up in court. And but that is gratifying to hear, but it also makes you feel, I suppose we put these weights on ourselves. You also think, well, if they enjoyed that much, then this series has to be as good as the last series, And this is series 5 of Sandwich Bar, and it's a joy to write, but it's just it's hard, and I think it probably gets a bit harder as you get older, really.
And to think about the last year, what's happened,
yeah, I mean, as I said, I probably said, didn't I? I felt like, the reason it's been delayed so long, because I've got an open brick, I can do Sandwich Bar whenever I want, which is nice, but the reason it was delayed so long was I think I wrote the last series in 2022, and I felt I couldn't really write another series when there was still a Tory government, because what was the point, really?
Ah, yes.
And that's solely the reason why it's been delayed so long, because I just couldn't. I would sit down and try and write it, and I couldn't, because like, what's the point, really? Well, the zeitgeist is the same, and it's only once once Starmer was elected that I felt liberated, and I immediately said to Radio 4, let's do another series.
Well, look, I'm sure the listeners would join me in wishing you the best of luck this weekend. Break a leg.
Thank you. Oh, I think my Lenny Henry Legends of Comedy is finally on this Saturday.
Ah.
Finally. They've saved the best till last.
On Channel 4. And when is your Antiques Roadshow with Nigel coming out?
Antiques Road Trip. I don't know when that is yet.
Okay, let us know about that. And good luck this weekend with Sandwich Bar.
Thank you.
Fucking smash it. And I think we've run out of time, Lex.
Oh, good.
Let's say goodbye.
Let's say bye-bye. 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 You've been listening to the Alexei Sayle Podcast. This show is produced and edited by Talal Karkuti. Music by Tarbush Records. Thanks to Audio Boom for hosting us. Please keep your emails coming in at alexeisaylepodcast@gmail.com. Goodbye.